It is Wednesday. Welcome to the Build Log. I am Maki. This is episode 30, and today one story taken apart properly. On the 7th of August, a frontier lab tripped its own alarm and stopped work on its best model.
I am Kai, and I want to say the nice thing first because I am not going to be able to say it later. A safety tripwire fired. Somebody built a wire, connected it to something real, and when it went off, they actually stopped. That is not nothing.
It is not nothing at all, and everything after that sentence is where it gets complicated. The facts, in the order they are known. On the 7th of August, OpenAI paused certain internal activities on its frontier model, codenamed Astra, after preliminary findings that it had reached the critical cybersecurity tier of the company's own Preparedness Framework. The pause ran a little over 2 weeks. During it, the company put new controls in place. It is also now rewriting the Preparedness Framework itself.
Rewriting the rulebook, because the thing the rulebook was worried about actually happened. I want to flag that early because we come back to it and it is the part that stayed with me.
First, what critical means. This is not a vibe. The framework defines it, and I am going to read it because the wording matters more than any summary I could give you. A model reaches the critical cybersecurity threshold if it can, quote, identify and develop functional zero-day exploits of all severity levels in many hardened real-world critical systems without human intervention. Or if it can, quote, devise and execute end-to-end novel strategies for cyberattacks against hardened targets, given only a high-level desired goal.
Given only a high-level desired goal. That is not a tool. That is a contractor.
A contractor. And note what is doing the work in both sentences. Without human intervention. End to end. Those phrases are the whole definition. Everything before them describes capability. Those two describe autonomy.
Which is the actual line, and it always has been. A model that finds a vulnerability and hands it to a person is a very good scanner. A model that finds it, writes the exploit, and runs the campaign is a different category of thing entirely.
Now, the part where the story got reported badly, and I want to be careful because both versions have a claim on the truth. Headlines said OpenAI paused AI training. Sam Altman said, quote, Astra's core training never stopped, and new models are still on track to ship soon.
So, which is it? And the answer is annoyingly both, depending on which noun you attach to the verb.
What paused was specific work, reinforcement learning on certain capabilities, and agentic evaluation runs. What did not pause was the core training of the model. Those are different activities that share a building.
And you can see how a headline gets there. Nobody clicks on OpenAI pauses a subset of reinforcement learning workloads pending a security review. That is the whole media diet in one story again.
The entire media diet. But the correction cuts both ways. And this is the bit I have not seen anyone say. If core training never stopped, that the tripwire did not stop the thing it is supposedly protecting us from. It stopped some of the work around it.
Yeah, the alarm went off, and they closed some of the doors.
Some of the doors. So what actually changed? The company describes universal monitoring for risky actions and misalignment across all agentic applications of the model. And that phrase includes training and evaluation, not just deployment. Stronger sandboxing on research workloads, tighter network access, fewer shared services, continuous security testing before anything resumed.
That last list is the least glamorous thing in this episode, and probably the most useful. Fewer shared services is not a headline. It is a person removing a way in.
And one more, which is the one worth the rest of the episode. Chain of thought monitoring, a system that reads the model's internal reasoning and aims to alert a human within 30 minutes of anomalous behavior.
30 minutes. Hold that number, because it sounds fast, and it is worth asking, fast compared to what?
That is the first half, a tripwire fired, and here is what it was connected to. Before the second half, where we get into whether reading a model's reasoning tells you anything, one quick thing. Chain of thought monitoring. The idea is simple and appealing. The model reasons in text before it acts. Read the text, and you can see the intent before the action.
It is appealing because it is the only interpretability method that a normal person can imagine working. You just read what it is thinking. Everything else in this field requires a diagram.
And it rests on one assumption that is doing enormous load-bearing work. Faithfulness. That the reasoning you can read is the reasoning that actually drives the behavior.
And that is not established. It is an open research problem, and the failure mode is not subtle. A model can produce reasoning that sounds like the explanation, while the behavior comes from somewhere else entirely.
In which case, you are not monitoring an engine. You are monitoring a narrator.
And here is the uncomfortable version. The model that would benefit most from an unfaithful narration is exactly the model this control exists to catch. The control is weakest against the case it was built for.
That is not a reason to skip it. A monitor that catches the careless failures is worth having, and most failures are careless. But it is a reason to be precise about what it covers.
It is a smoke detector, genuinely useful, not a fire marshal, and nobody should sell it as one.
Not a fire marshal. Now, the 30 minutes, because I promised. 30 minutes is a good response time for a human process. It is an eternity for an autonomous one. The framework's own threshold describes a model executing end-to-end campaigns. If the concern is a system that plans and acts without intervention, the relevant question is how much it can do in 30 minutes, and nobody has published that number.
30 minutes is fast if you are a person getting a page. It is a long weekend if you are a process running at machine speed.
A long weekend! Which brings me to the thing underneath all of it. Every single element of this story is self-declared. The company wrote the threshold. The company ran the evaluation. The company graded the result. The company chose the response. And the company is now rewriting the framework that defines the threshold.
Every step of that is defensible on its own. Who else has the model? Who else could run the eval? And all of it together is still a closed loop.
I want to be fair here, because there is a real argument on the other side. Publishing a detailed cyber capability evaluation is publishing a roadmap. There are genuine reasons not to put that in the open.
Sure, but there is a lot of space between publish everything and trust us. Auditors exist, classified review exists. Every other industry that handles dangerous things figured out how to let someone in the door without printing the blueprints.
And the rewrite is where this matters most. A framework being rewritten as models approach the limits it imagined is the most important moment for someone outside to be watching, and it is the moment when the fewest people can see.
Nobody rewrites the rules at the exact moment the rules start biting and expects that to look good. It might be completely honest. It is still the worst possible time to be the only one holding the pen.
So where does that leave the good news? Because I do think it is good news. A company built an internal threshold, tested against it, found it had been crossed, and materially changed what it was doing, voluntarily, before an incident, not after one. That is the behavior everyone says they want, and it happened.
And it will get almost no credit for it, because stopping is invisible. Nothing happened. Nothing is the product.
Nothing is the product. Which is the structural problem with safety work generally. The successes are counterfactual. You cannot show anyone the attack that did not occur. What to watch, and these are the specific things that would change the picture. 1. The rewritten Preparedness Framework, specifically whether the critical threshold gets looser as models approach it. That is the single most informative document coming.
2. Whether any external party is ever allowed to verify a threshold call, not the full eval, just somebody outside the building confirming the wire is attached.
3. Whether the chain of thought monitor's false negative rate is ever published. A monitor with no published miss rate is a claim, not a control.
4. Whether other labs adopt the same tiers. If everyone has a critical threshold and they all sit in different places, then the word means nothing, and we are back to marketing.
One more thing before the last thought, because the fourth item on that list is the one people skip. Every serious lab now has a tiered framework like this. Different names, different tiers, different wording, and there is no rule anywhere that says a tier has to mean the same thing at two different companies.
Which is a problem the moment anyone starts comparing. If my critical is your high, and your critical is my nobody panic, then the word is doing marketing rather than measurement.
And it is worse than incomparable, because the incentives point the same direction at every one of them. A threshold that fires often is expensive. A threshold that never fires is cheap and looks responsible.
Nobody sets out to write a lenient threshold. You just keep finding reasonable arguments for why this particular case does not quite qualify, and each one is fine on its own.
That is why this specific pause is worth more attention than the framework language around it. A threshold that has actually fired once has been tested against reality. Most of them have not.
It is the difference between a smoke detector on the ceiling and a smoke detector you have heard go off. Only one of those has told you anything.
And it is the strongest argument for the boring ask. Not publish everything. Just let somebody outside confirm the wire is attached, so a threshold that never fires can be distinguished from a threshold that cannot. Last thought. It would be easy to run this as a scandal, and it is not one. It would be equally easy to run it as a triumph, and it is not that either.
It is a company doing roughly the right thing inside a system with no way to check. And the honest reaction to that is to say both halves out loud, in that order, without softening either one.
The tripwire fired. That is real, and it is better than the alternative. Whether the wire is attached to the right thing is a question nobody outside the building can currently answer.
Thank you for watching. We will be here when the rewritten framework lands, reading the threshold very carefully.